till May 2021. Next, please. So I would like to present the key findings. For climate, from our climatic model, we have projected that the wet spells are becoming longer and the dry spell are projected to become shorter. There will be a continual increment in heat waves in terms of occurrence, duration, and magnitude. In terms of air pollution, we have seen a lot of issues on air pollutions in Malaysia, especially in urban area. The short-term exposure to ambient air pollution is associated with increases in childhood respiratory morbidity and mortality in Asia, low-middle income countries, and also increases the risk of hospitalization for respiratory diseases in children in Malaysia. And the recurrent haze that we have been facing since 1980s, based on our studies, we have evidence to show that the health effects among young children below 5 years old could be more acute when haze occurred for a longer duration and higher intensity. Next, please. Another key findings of these studies, and we can see in Malaysia, climate change and environmental degradation impact the health and well-being of children mainly in 4 ways. That is through waterborne diseases that could be linked to the extreme weather events such as floods and droughts. The vector-borne diseases like dengue and malaria, which are climate sensitive, the health problems linked to air pollution, especially the respiratory diseases, and the health risk from exposure to chemicals, hazardous substances, and waste. Next, please. Based on our case studies, we have found that the marginalized children have increased vulnerabilities. They are vulnerable to infectious disease, and they have issues to access to schools and education due to climate change. It has disrupted the transportation and quality of education, and we have seen it more during this COVID pandemic. They have issues to access to basic services and supplies. The family income, instability of the family income, where the communities really depends, the marginalized community really depends on climate-sensitive economic activities, and the health hazards and general well-being, especially during the extreme weather events, has caused both physical and mental hazards. Next, please. And the spotlights of our case studies. For Pulau Gaya especially, we have seen that 45% decline in school attendance due to safety concern, commuting to schools via boats during the rainy seasons, and 71% of adults are unable to go to sea to catch fish during the rainy season, which lead to drastic fall in income for families. In Post Kuala Lumpur, where our orang asli are there, and there are, during times of extreme weather events pattern, about 58% of children cannot attend school. And the 3/4 of the Tenya community depends on climate-sensitive sources of income, such as plantation work. And 1/4 of parents do not have any income during the rainy seasons. For our PPR community in Sungai Bonus, 29% of children perceive that their parents or guardians face income insecurity and are affected by fluctuating food prices due to climate change and leading to food insecurity. In terms of our policy analysis, we found that there are governance gap and opportunities, but there are opportunities that can exist. The first findings that we found is that there are some issues with governance framework, as most of the policy and laws came into existence before climate change became a global issue. We found also that children has not been addressed as a specific target group for protection and their unique rights in the context of environmental and climate risk. There are issues with coherence between policies, laws, and plans in health, child protection, and environment, with different aims and target group despite having the same subject matter, and lack of awareness for the participation of children or their representative in climate policy making processes. Next, please. So based on our studies, we like to highlight the 6 key points from this finding, and whereby overall the study revealed that we need the crucial interconnection between climate change and environmental degradation and children's health and well-being in Malaysia. The first one, we have seen that the climate change and environmental degradation are intensifying in Malaysia. We have a longer duration of wet spells and heat waves. And second one, children's rights are protected to varying degree depending on societal and geographical conditions. And the accelerated climate change and environmental degradation presents serious risks for children. Children in marginalized communities are more vulnerable, and the girls tend to be more vulnerable than boys. However, each gender is affected differently. And finally, not all aspects of children's rights have adequately been considered in Malaysian governance framework on climate and environment. Next, please. So, as a conclusion, based on our study, we would like to recommend we would like to put up a few recommendations. That is a broad recommendation for Malaysia, whereby these findings underscore the importance of specifically addressing climate and environmental issues from children's perspective. At community as well as policy levels, children's need should always be the heart of Malaysia, climate adaptation and mitigating measures. The first recommendation is we hope that we could have a child-sensitive governance framework. The second, we hope that we can go for climate-smart education. The third one, we need more advocacy for children and vulnerable groups, and also research and development. We need to increase more on studies to look at the child-centric guidelines, and for example, alternative education modalities, more training modules on climate and environmental degradation, and also children's well-being. And finally, we hope that we could have more public and private partnership, inclusive of platform for representation of children in policy and decision-making process, support child-sensitive climate change adaptation and mitigation, and promote innovation to adapt to and mitigate climate change with particular focus on children. I am very pleased to announce that based on our studies, we have produced few technical report and synthesis report. And here we have also our booklet and the coffee table book. And the children's story book is on the way. We have also published 3 scientific journals in high impact. Published 3 scientific papers in high impact journals and 2 papers in the law. Before I end, I would like to thank everyone, especially Unicef, for the support that they gave us, and all the study team from UKM and also from UMS, Prof. Ramza, and the whole the research team members from UITM, IIUM, Kyoto University, NIES, Japan, University Malaya, and also the UNDP, UNICEF, EPU, all the ministries, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Environment and Water, CASA, Yayasan Hasanah, the NGOs that were with us, Suhakam, Malaysian Youth Delegation, Econites, and all individuals who have contributed to this study. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mazura Sahani. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is a session of question and answers from the members of the public. And for this session, the panelists that present physically today is Mr. Ismail Nafi from UNICEF, Professor Dr. Mazura, UKM, Professor Madhya, Dr. Ramza Dambu from UMS, and also joining us virtually is our panelist Toh Ziki, Youth Climate Advocate and final year law student, University of Malaya, and youth representative. have we got our questions? Okay. Maybe to start off, is a question for Mr. Ismail. Following this report, what are the key steps that UNICEF is taking to address the impact of the climate change on children?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think that the first step and the most important step is to create awareness, because as we mentioned at the beginning, when we started looking at this particular topic, we didn't see much evidence or data existing about this particular issue. And I think this study highlighted quite a bit of key findings in terms of how children in Malaysia are being impacted. So we would like to make sure that all key stakeholders are aware of these findings so that we together can determine what action needs to be taken. Also, we would like these findings to be taken into account in adaptation and mitigation measures at different levels to make sure that the risks are minimized and that children are protected and also empowered with the skills and knowledge to take action. Because as I mentioned during my presentation, there is a lot of hopelessness among children and young people about the issue, because they hear about the problem through different channels, but at the same time, they don't know exactly what to do about it. I think that that's also something that we really need to take seriously to make sure that our children know more about climate change and also know what to do about climate change, both now and in the future. Yeah, and the existing policies and frameworks, as Prof. Mazura highlighted, there are quite a bit of gaps there. So we would like to work with different stakeholders from the government, the private sector, NGOs, youth representatives to strengthen existing policies. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mr. Ismail. I think one more question is to Ziki, the youth representative. As a young person, who are you so concerned about the climate crisis?
Hi, thank you so much for the question, first of all. I think for that, the main reason why, as a young person, I am so concerned about the climate crisis is largely attributable to the uncertainty of our future. So as a young person, of course, we have like a lot of dreams and we're working towards our different goals. But I think due to the climate crisis that's looming over us every single day, there's a huge uncertainty and huge insecurity towards our future. So I think that is one of the reasons why I'm so concerned. And I think that's also one of the reasons why a lot of young people are fighting for the climate crisis. And second to that, I think it's because of our generations, how we're so in touch with the information, in the sense that we are aware of all the happenings that's happening all across the world. We can see that people are suffering due to the consequences of the climate crisis. And a lot of these countries are people who are the ones who are contributing the least towards the carbon emissions, but yet are suffering the greatest consequences. And last but not least, this is also interlinked towards the concept of intergenerational justice. And this is a concept meaning to say that the current generation are supposed to protect and hold the environment in trust for the generations to come. And I think this is a concept that should be practiced and inculcated in the current setting, but I think it's not getting the sufficient attention that it needs to be. However, optimistically, I can see that in several countries, such as in Japan, this concept has been included within their constitution. Also in the Philippines, in the early 2000s, I think their courts have recognized this concept, meaning to say that the current generation has a responsibility to protect the environment for the generations to come. And more recently in Australia, the Minister of Environment actually was ruled by the court to have the responsibility to protect the environment for the younger people. So I think those are the reasons why I'm so concerned about the climate crisis. And my experience as a young person has been it hasn't been a walk at the park, because ever since I was born, I think the climate crisis has been becoming more and more severe. So that's why I'm very, very concerned about the climate crisis. And I hope it's about prime time that everyone acts upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ziki. We have one question for Promaja Dr. Ramza. The question is, how are children in Sabah being disproportionately impacted by climate change?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, everyone. Perhaps it is good if I could start with this statement, just to set the context right. Climate change is extremely discriminating when it comes to impacts on human well-being. What does it mean? It means that even we have to face the same magnitude of climate change, the impacts are not necessarily equal for everyone. How severe we get affected by climate change, that depends on how vulnerable we are. And this vulnerability is measured by various factors, including our demographic and socioeconomic status, and also our standing and position within the community. Because our ability to adapt to climate change would be strongly determined by the level of access, our access to resources, and also our access to institutional facilitation. And that is the reason, actually, why women and children are more prone to the impact of climate change, because that is the cultural setting, especially in Asia, where we are. In the context of Sabah, we have two groups of children who are highly vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change. The first one is the so-called stateless children. They are vulnerable because of their citizenship status. And because of that, they don't really have all that institutional support and facilitation that children with citizenship do have. The second group is the underprivileged children in terms of socioeconomic. They are vulnerable because they lack of access to resources. Our research in Sabah focuses on the children in Pulau Gaya, and let me tell you why we specifically choose this case study. Because it happens that the children in Pulau Gaya fit both the criteria of being marginal and vulnerable. They are mostly with no legal documentation, and they are from the lower income group, which makes them socioeconomically underprivileged. And because of this unfortunate livelihood setting, they are severely under the threat of climate change. For example, exposure of the climate-borne disease, lack of access to clean water during the extreme drought, and the issues of safety, especially during the heavy rain and storm. So I hope that puts some insight on why children in Sabah are vulnerable. And that is also, just to add some factors into it, we know that Sabah, of all the states in Malaysia, Sabah is the most affected when it comes to climate change, because Sabah is the closest to the two main sources of large-scale atmospheric circulation, which is the monsoon and also the El Nino Southern Oscillation, which come from the Pacific Ocean. So I think children everywhere in Malaysia are impacted by climate change, but particularly in Sabah, and because of the background, the socioeconomic background, and also some of these major, just what I mentioned just now, and because of the fact that Sabah is physically the region where it is mostly affected by climate change. Sorry, I'm not quite comfortable with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Professor Dr. Ramza Dambul. And one last question, a quick one, perhaps for Professor Mazura. What is the most striking finding from the report, I think?
Thank you, Dr. Yanti. I think the most important findings from this study is that we have shown that the climate change is real, it's happening globally, and also in Malaysia. We have seen the climate change. When you want to see climate change, it is actually the events that occur during the extreme weather events. I mean, extreme temperature, such as heavy rain, and also extreme heat that is during drought. That means we can see haze in Malaysia. And then the second findings are the most vulnerable groups for all these effects of climate change and also environmental degradations are the extreme ages, like especially children and elderly. But here we focus on children who will be our next generation, and we need to protect them. That means we need, and also I think we have shown that if the children's or the vulnerable groups are affected, then when we have the marginalized children, they are more, that means like more double and triple affected by these events. And the next finding, I think we need more education to link between climate, environmental degradation, and the well-being of public and children. And also not only on education, but also we must trigger more action. And then we need the support of political policies and also governance to support all this effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Mazura. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the first session of today's event. That is the webinar. So next will be the officiation of today's report launch event. And for that matter, we will rest for about 2 minutes while waiting for our honorable guest to come in. May I please request our honorable guests to remain standing for our national anthem. Thank you very much, everybody. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, to start our launching event for today, may I please request Mr. Ahmad Shibli to recite Doa.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma innaka khalaqun azim, innaka sami'un alim, innaka ghafurur rahim, innaka rabbul arshil azim, innaka al-barul jawadul karim. Ya Allah, Engkaulah yang mempunyai segala kepujian. Engkaulah yang berhak menerima segala kepujian. Engkaulah yang berhak menerima segala kesyukuran. Engkaulah yang memiliki segala pemerintahan. Di tangan Engkau segala kebajikan. Kepada Engkaulah kembali segala urusan. Allahumma ya Karim, ya Rahim. Cucurilah rahmat dan rahimmu ke atas majlis pelancaran laporan Impact of Climate Change on Children, a Malaysian Perspective yang diadakan pada hari ini. Berkatilah ia dari awal hingga akhirnya. Ya fa'alul lima yurid. Kami juga memohon perlindungan daripadamu dari segala perkara yang boleh mencacat celakan majlis kami dan daripada segala perkara yang melalaikan kami dari berbuat baik taat kepadamu ya Allah. Kepadamu juga kami serah segala urusan kami. Allahumma jam'ana hadha jam'an marhuma wa tafarruqna min ba'dihi tafarruqan ma'suma. Rabbana 'alaika tawakkalna وإليك أنبنا وإليك المصير ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad Shibli. Without further ado, may I please invite Yang berbahagia, Profesor Datuk Dr. Nur Razak Muhammad Nordin, Deputy Vice Chancellor UKM for our UKM opening speech. Prof. Datuk.
I'd like to ask permission to take up my Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Dr. Shamuddin bin Muhammad Hashim,
Deputy Secretary General Strategic, Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development. The Honorable Dr. Rashid Mustafa Sarwar, UNICEF Representative to Malaysia and Special Representative to Brunei Darussalam. Professor Dr. Suzana Sahar, Dean, Faculty of Health Science, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Mr. Ismail Nafi, Program Specialist from Innovation and Sustainability at UNICEF Malaysia. Associate Professor Technologist Dr. Ramza, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Innovation, University Malaysia Sabah. Professor Dr. Mazrura Sahani, Principal Investigator for project entitled Impacts of Climate Change and Environmental Degradation on Children in Malaysia and Assessment of Child Sensitivity of Current Adaptation and Mitigation Policies. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, praise to the Almighty God for all His blessings, grace and mercy that have made possible for us to celebrate this event in excellent condition and health. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to the National University of Malaysia or University Kebangsaan Malaysia, UKM. I was informed that today's event is participated by stakeholders from various government agencies, NGOs, representatives from higher learning institutions, and members of the public. Your presence and support will definitely make the event more significant and meaningful. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is real. The Earth temperature is increasing. The sea level is rising. Weather has become more extreme and unpredictable. The rise in greenhouse gases from human activities such as deforestation has led to a lot of changes that we are experiencing today. We did this and it affects our children. Children are more vulnerable to climate change and they are more exposed to various risks and effects. They are more vulnerable to heat waves, extreme weather conditions such as storms, heavy downpours, and floods not only threaten the lives and safety of children, but also put them at risk of mental health problems. Apart from that, poor air quality from climate change has caused breathing difficulties, especially among children with asthma. In some parts of the world, climate change has even led to insufficient food and water supply. Ladies and gentlemen, failure to take a prompt and substantive action, therefore, would be an act of injustice to all children. A paradigm shift in our way of life, in the production and consumption of energy, are both a necessity and opportunity for major innovation, job creation, and immediate health benefits that are deemed necessary for all children around the world. Scientists and researchers, therefore, play significant roles in providing solutions to various environmental issues and challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change, environmental degradation, and pollution are intensifying in Malaysia alongside rapid development. With the funding from UNICEF Malaysia, a team of experts led by Professor Dr. Mazrura Sahani has formulated an integrated framework of issues and recommendations on the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation on children's well-being in Malaysia. The remarkable findings of their study were discussed in this report entitled Impact of Climate Change on Children, a Malaysia Perspective. These findings underscore the importance of specifically addressing environmental issues from a child's perspective and not as part of the general population. As the level of protection for children in Malaysia varies with societal and geographical conditions, findings from this study indicated that children living in marginalized communities are more vulnerable to climate and environmental risks. From this study, the researchers clearly showcased the importance of interdisciplinary cooperation. Congratulations to Professor Dr. Mazura Sahani and her team. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to encourage and strengthen the cooperation between representatives from the government and private sectors and explore ways to pool resources through public-private partnerships in addressing issues related to children, the environment, and climate change. It is hoped that child-sensitive climate mitigation and adaptation plans can be implemented with suitable programs and activities. I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation again to Prof. Dr. Mazura Sahani and all the researchers involved in this project for their hard work and dedication. Congratulations, UKM and University Malaysia Sabah. I wish you all the best, and I hope that this project will produce long-lasting outcomes and provide a good basis for more future studies that will helpful for the betterment of our children and society. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Honorable Professor Datuk Dr. Nuraza Muhammad Nordin. Next, ladies and gentlemen, let us hear from the Honorable Dr. Rashid Mustafa Sawar, Unicef representative to Malaysia and Special Representative to Brunei Darussalam. Dr. Rashid.
Dr. Hishamuddin bin Hasham, Professor Nuraza Muhammad Nordin, Dr. Susanna Sahar, Professor Dr. Ramza, and of course, Professor Dr. Mazura, the lead researcher and the key person for this study. A very good morning to you and Assalamu alaikum. This is my first visit in this campus, and I believe this would not be last. But this is for a very, very important occasion, for a very important cause. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is not happening, it's happened. And as Professor Nuraza said, it's real, it is real. This very, very important institution, we are very proud of partnering with two key lead universities in Malaysia for this important research. We usually say children are our future, but that should not be the end of it. Children is our today, and investment needed today to harvest a better future. And climate change is a child rights crisis. If we are not investing on this today, we will not have a better future. And if anybody doubts on that, I think that group or that person will have to brought to us. Because I do believe, and I think we do believe all who are here today, that climate change is happening all over the world. And today's launch is time-wise very, very important because the COP26 is starting next Sunday in Glasgow, and we should send a strong message from Malaysia that we are caring for our children and we are concerned. This is the first, this kind of research that we're doing in Malaysia, and that's identifying key issues and define key recommendations how we should move forward. The representation from the government, Dr. Hisham is here, from the key partner of Unicef at the government, our civil society organizations, and importantly, the media partners. We are very, very happy that this launch is happening here. I wanted to highlight one very important disconnect, very important mismatch that's happening. 9 out of 10 children are concerned about climate change. And somehow they are trying their best to initiate something because they're very aware of their future. On the other side, the policymakers, the private sector, who are the biggest polluter of our environment, somehow not on board yet. And this disconnect is something that worries all of us. We should bring, as Dr. Noraza just mentioned, public-private partnership. This is crucial because Malaysia is a very, very industrial country. And industry, we need industry for economy, for employment, for many other reasons. But those industries has to be environmental friendly. Those industries have to be child friendly. And this is where we need to put all our efforts. We need to put our hands. I believe that the content and the key findings and recommendations we will hear later, but I wanted to just ask all of us to connect all dots that are and gaps, and let's make our world greener. Let's make our world safer for our future generation, and of course for us, because I don't think that we are out of this equation. We are within that equation as well. So I'm very happy that we are launching it today and here. Very happy to have distinguished guests and the key researchers here. Thank you very much to be our partner. Thank you very much to lead this process. And Unicef will always be in frontline partnership with the government and with everybody in this important journey. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much for a very warm opening speech by Dr. Rashid Mustafa Sarwar. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is the officiating of our report launch event today. And for this, dengan izin, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, saya ingin menjemput yang berbahagia Dr. Hishamuddin bin Haji Hashim untuk melancarkan acara pagi ini. Silakan dijemput.
بسم Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I would like to convey regards and apology from the Honorable Deputy Minister, who at the last minute could not be with us this morning due to unprecedented reason. And I was mandated to read her speech this morning, and it is in Malay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat pagi. Terima kasih kepada pengerusi majlis yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Nur Azah Muhammad Nurdin, Timbalan Naib Chancellor Jaringan Industri Alumni dan Masyarakat Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Suzana Sahar, Dekan Fakulti Sains Kesihatan Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, yang dihormati Dr. Rashid Mustafa Sarwar, Wakil Unicef di Malaysia, yang dihormati Mr. Ismail Nafi, Bahagian Iklim dan Alam Sekitar Unicef Malaysia, yang berusaha Profesor Bardia Technologist Dr. Ramzah Dambul, Timbalan Naib Chancellor Penyelidikan dan Inovasi Universiti Malaysia Sabah, Profesor Dr. Mazrura Sahani, Ketua Projek Kajian, pegawai-pegawai dari Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat, dan juga agensi di bawah Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat, yang dihormati Datuk Datin Profesor Dr. Tuan-puan serta seluruh hadirin sekalian. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wabtaghi fima atakallahu ad-daral akhirah wa la tansa nasibaka minad dunya wa ahsin kama ahsanallahu ilaik wa la tabghil fasada fil ard innallaha la yuhibbul mufsidin. Yang bermaksud, dan carilah pada apa yang telah dianugerahkan Allah kepadamu, yakni kebahagiaan negeri akhirat, dan janganlah kamu melupakan bahagianmu dari kenikmatan duniawi, dan berbuat baiklah kepada orang lain sebagaimana Allah telah berbuat baik kepadamu, dan janganlah kamu berbuat kerosakan di muka bumi, sesungguhnya Allah tidak menyukai orang-orang yang berbuat kerosakan. Al-Qasas ayat 77. Alhamdulillah, syukur kehadrat ilahi kerana dengan limpah rahmatnya kita semua dapat bersama-sama berkumpul pada hari ini bagi majlis pelancaran laporan impak perubahan iklim terhadap kanak-kanak Perspektif Malaysia 2021. Saya telah dimaklumkan bahawa projek ini telah bermula pada bulan Mac 2020 dan berjaya disiapkan pada bulan Ogos 2021 yang lalu. Setinggi-tinggi ucapan penghargaan dan tahniah diucapkan kepada Profesor Dr. Mazrura Sahani dan semua penyelidik daripada Pasukan Perubahan Iklim dan Degradasi Alam Sekitar serta pihak Unicef atas usaha dan kerja keras bagi menyelesaikan projek ini. Walaupun dalam tempoh negara dan seluruh dunia sedang berhadapan dengan ancaman wabak COVID-19. Di Malaysia, kajian mengenai kesan umum perubahan iklim, kemerosotan alam sekitar dan pencemaran telah banyak dijalankan. Namun masih kurang kajian dan perhatian diberikan untuk menilai kesan perubahan iklim dan kemerosotan alam sekitar terhadap kanak-kanak. Mereka adalah golongan yang paling terdedah secara terus dengan sebarang aktiviti yang berlaku di persekitaran, secara langsung atau tidak langsung. Justru, kajian ini sangatlah tepat pada masanya. Mengikut laporan yang telah dibuat, saya difahamkan projek ini telah menghasilkan beberapa penemuan penting berkenaan kesan-kesan perubahan iklim dan alam sekitar terhadap kesejahteraan pembangunan kanak-kanak dan cadangan pelan mitigasi bagi menanganinya selari dengan objektif Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat, iaitu untuk menjamin hak dan kesejahteraan kanak-kanak
bagi mencapai potensi yang optimum dalam pelbagai aspek. Saya secara peribadi sejak dulu sampai sekarang berasa sangat kesal sekiranya hasil kajian yang sangat baik serta memakan kos yang besar dan komitmen masa yang bukan sedikit oleh para kumpulan pengkaji dibiarkan tanpa ada manfaat, khususnya sebagai rujukan dalam pembuatan dasar dan juga pelan tindakan. Kajian-kajian ilmiah yang baik oleh pakar-pakar akademik kita sepatutnya dikongsi dan dimanfaatkan sebagai rujukan dan panduan oleh semua pihak yang berkepentingan demi masyarakat dan negara kita. Justru saya sangat gembira dengan perkongsian hasil kajian daripada pakar-pakar universiti tempatan sebagaimana kajian kali ini. Hasil kajian seumpama ini akan memberi manfaat kepada para pembuat keputusan, iaitu yang berada di kementerian-kementerian berkaitan, termasuklah Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat. Isu berkaitan kelestarian alam sekitar dan kesejahteraan kanak-kanak sebenarnya bukanlah hanya menjadi tanggungjawab Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat semata-mata. Bahkan ianya juga perlu diberi perhatian sewajarnya oleh semua pihak yang berkaitan, kerana ianya perlu dijadikan salah satu faktor penilaian penting dalam menentukan sebarang pembentukan dasar, polisi, peraturan dan pelaksanaan program setiap peringkat. Hadirin sekalian, ayat yang saya bacakan di awal tadi adalah satu pernyataan daripada Tuhan yang menciptakan manusia, langit dan bumi serta seluruh isinya. Allah menyuruh kita mencari kebahagiaan akhirat, namun janganlah lupa menikmati rezeki di dunia. Namun dalam usaha kita mencari segala kenikmatan itu, kita diperingatkan agar sentiasa berbuat baik, yakni ihsan kepada orang lain sebagaimana Allah berbuat baik kepada kita. Allah juga memberi amaran kepada manusia agar tidak membuat kerosakan di muka bumi ini kerana Allah marah kepada orang-orang yang berbuat kerosakan. Dunia ini dijadikan oleh Allah untuk kita manusia manfaatkan sebaiknya. Dunia ini ladang akhirat. Sebagai khalifah Allah di dunia ini, apa sahaja yang kita lakukan di dunia ini ada perhitungannya di sisi Allah. Apa sahaja yang dijadikan di langit dan di bumi ada fungsi dan manfaatnya kepada kita. Dari sekecil-kecil debu hinggalah sebesar-besar gunung ganang. Ianya tidak dijadikan oleh Allah dengan sia-sia, melainkan ada fungsi dan manfaatnya kepada manusia dan kelestarian alam. Maka menjadi tanggungjawab kita setiap orang, walau siapa pun kita, untuk memainkan peranan bagi menjaga alam sekitar. Sekarang ini seringkali benar kita dengar bencana alam yang berlaku di sana-sini. Banjir, tanah runtuh, tsunami, cuaca melampau, gempa bumi, kebakaran hutan dan seumpamanya semakin kerap berlaku. Mengapakah ini semua terjadi? Sebenarnya perkara ini telah diperingatkan oleh Allah melalui ayatnya. Zaharal fasadu fil barri wal bahr bima kasabat aydin nas liyudhiqahum ba'dal ladzi 'amilu la'allahum yarji'un. Telah timbul berbagai kerosakan dan bala bencana di darat dan di laut dengan sebab apa yang telah dilakukan oleh tangan manusia. Timbulnya yang demikian kerana Allah merasakan mereka sebahagian dari balasan perbuatan-perbuatan buruk yang mereka telah lakukan, supaya mereka kembali insaf dan bertaubat. Surah Ar-Rum ayat 41. Maka fahamlah kita bahawa apa jua yang berlaku kepada dunia ini hari ini adalah hasil dari tangan-tangan manusia itu sendiri. Pengabaian terhadap penjagaan alam sekitar sehingga merosakkannya akan membawa kepada pelbagai bencana alam yang membahayakan manusia itu sendiri. Kita sebagai orang dewasa, ibu bapa serta pemimpin setiap peringkat perlulah mengambil tanggungjawab ini. Ianya secara tidak langsung akan memberikan kesan negatif kepada kehidupan dan masa depan anak-anak kita seluruhnya. Nilai-nilai mencintai alam sekitar ini perlulah dimulakan dari umur kanak-kanak dan mestilah dididik bermula dari rumah. Anak-anak kita mestilah dididik dan dilatih agar dapat menjadi ejen perubahan dalam menghadapi isu perubahan iklim ini. Nilai-nilai ini mestilah dijadikan sebahagian silibus pendidikan awal kanak-kanak dan juga mendidik ibu bapa agar ianya menjadi budaya dan amalan sepanjang hidup mereka. Kerana menjaga alam ini adalah perintah Allah dan sesiapa yang berusaha menjaga dan memelihara alam ini pasti akan dikasihi oleh Allah. Hadis daripada Anas radhiyallahu anhu, beliau berkata Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam bersabda, tidak ada seorang muslim pun yang menanam pokok atau mengusahakan pertanian lalu burung, manusia atau binatang memakan daripadanya kecuali akan menjadi sedekah untuknya. Hadis riwayat Bukhari dan Muslim. Hadirin sekalian, saya telah membaca laporan kajian ini dan amat tertarik dengan 5 saranan yang dikemukakan oleh kumpulan pengkaji bagi kita menangani isu perubahan iklim dan alam sekitar dengan mengambil kira kepentingan kanak-kanak. Iaitu, yang pertama, kerangka kerajaan yang peka terhadap kanak-kanak. Kedua, kerangka pendidikan bijak iklim. Ketiga, sokongan terhadap kanak-kanak dan golongan rentan. Keempat, penyelidikan dan pembangunan. Dan yang kelima, kerjasama awam dan swasta. Bagi saya, ianya sangat baik dan boleh dibincang dengan lebih lanjut bersama pihak berkepentingan yang lain bagi memastikan kesejahteraan pembangunan kanak-kanak menjadi keutamaan dalam setiap sisi pembangunan masyarakat dan negara. Pihak Kementerian Pembangunan Wanita, Keluarga dan Masyarakat sangat berbesar hati dan sangat mengalu-alukan sebarang bentuk kerjasama daripada pihak institut penyelidikan, pemain industri, NGO dan mana-mana pihak yang dapat sama-sama membantu kerajaan dalam usaha pembangunan dan kesejahteraan kanak-kanak di Malaysia, khususnya dan pembangunan keluarga serta masyarakat umumnya. Kajian ini secara asasnya telah membuktikan bahawa wujud perkaitan yang jelas antara perubahan iklim dan alam sekitar terhadap perkembangan fisiologi dan psikologi kanak-kanak. Maka wajarlah ia menjadi tajuk penting dalam sebarang pertimbangan dan penetapan sebarang dasar, peraturan dan program oleh semua pembuat keputusan di setiap peringkat. Anak-anak adalah aset masa depan kita. Corak masa depan negara kita akan terkesan dengan cara bagaimana kita menangani isu pembangunan anak-anak kita pada hari ini. Sekali lagi, saya mengambil peluang ini untuk mengucapkan tahniah kepada semua kumpulan pengkaji dan semua pihak yang terlibat dalam kajian ini secara langsung atau tidak langsung. Semoga ianya menjadi amal jariah yang menjadi pahala akhirat kepada semua. Segala penemuan yang baik ini perlulah diuruskan dengan sewajarnya bersama pihak-pihak yang berkenaan. Semoga usaha ini mendapat keredaan Allah Ta'ala dan semoga ia bermanfaat kepada kita semua. InsyaAllah. Selaras dengan konsep Keluarga Malaysia yang telah diperkenalkan oleh Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri pada Ogos yang lalu, maka amat bertepatanlah isu kepentingan kanak-kanak ini diberi perhatian dalam sebarang pembuatan keputusan kerana ianya melibatkan kelestarian alam sekitar dan seterusnya akan memberi kesan kepada manusia umumnya. Sebanyak 3 nilai teras telah digariskan dalam menjayakan agenda keluarga Malaysia yang sejahtera, iaitu keterangkuman atau inclusivity, kebersamaan atau common ground, dan kesyukuran atau contentment. Kami di KPWKM sentiasa mencari ruang untuk menterjemahkan kesejahteraan rakyat berdasarkan anjuran Islam dalam setiap dasar dan tindakan, kerana Islam adalah penyelesaian kepada semua perkara dan ia memerlukan kerjasama tindakan semua pihak. Akhirnya dengan lafaz mulia, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, siru ala barakatillah, saya dengan ini melancarkan laporan impak perubahan iklim terhadap kanak-kanak Perspektif Malaysia 2021. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Yang berbahagia Dr. Hishamuddin bin Haji Hashim. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is a short video by Unicef that portray 3 characters from the 3 children from the 3 communities that we have visited for these studies.
Climate change affects everyone, but did you know children, especially those living in marginalized communities, are particularly vulnerable? Let's take a trip to 3 communities in Malaysia to see how climate change affects children's futures. Our first stop, Pulau Gaya, an island off the coast of Sabah. Meet Dido. He is a bajau boy. His father is a fisherman. His mother makes salted fish to sell at the market. They live in a village built on stilts above the seawater. To get to school, Dido and his friends take a boat. They are always happy to be at school. Today, it is raining heavily. The weather fluctuates frequently due to climate change. When the rain gets too heavy, Dido and his friends cannot go to school. His dad cannot go out to catch fish. Thankfully, they can depend on salted fish to eat. Dido's mum sells crafts made from shells and pearls to supplement their income. For the community in Pulau Gaya, climate change means more rain. While rain provides fresh water, too much rain means children can't go to school and parents don't get to work. With less money, many families cannot afford to buy fresh food. Next, let's visit Pos Kuala Mu in Perak. The village sits in the interior of the Piaf Forest Reserve. The forest protects the whole village from extreme heat. Juria is a Temia girl. Like most of her neighbours, her parents have a farm. They catch fish in the rivers. They are blessed with available food all year round. Every day, Julia walks to school. Recently, there are days when the rains don't stop. The rains can make the river water rise and swell. The villagers can't cross the river. The heavy rain also causes landslides. This makes it dangerous for Julia and her friends to go to school. For indigenous communities, such as the Temia in Perak, heavy rain can cause flash floods and landslides. This puts the villagers, especially the children, at risk. Here's our last stop, Kuala Lumpur. Unlike Juria, Bala feels the extreme heat during the dry season. His parents tell him that it is much hotter these days than before. They live in a city and are surrounded by tall buildings. This traps heat and makes it hotter than the other areas. Together with the higher temperatures caused by climate change, it can get unbearable. Bala's family feels the pinch when extreme weather impacts agricultural farms, as this causes the prices of vegetables and other fresh food supplies to rise. This becomes a burden on Bala's family, who does not have a high income level. Rising prices means less food on the table. Children who live in urban areas enjoy better access to clean water, electricity, education, and health facilities. But they still suffer indirectly from the effects of climate change in other places. Stories like this exist everywhere around the country. Dido, Juria, and Bala are children who enjoy their lives and are happy to take each day as it comes. But wouldn't it be wonderful if they could live a life that is secure in a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment and plan their futures so that they can reach their full potential?
Ladies and gentlemen, our study is for every child.
Untuk setiap kanak-kanak,
Whoever she is,
siapapun dia,
wherever he lives,
di mana sahaja dia berada,
every child deserves a childhood,
setiap kanak-kanak berhak menikmati zaman kanak-kanak,
a future,
masa depan,
a fair chance.
peluang yang saksama.
That's why UNICEF is here.
Itulah sebabnya UNICEF ada.
for each and every child,
untuk setiap kanak-kanak,
working day in and day out,
berjuang tanpa lelah
in 190 countries and territories,
di 190 negara dan wilayah,
reaching the hardest to reach,
mendekati yang paling sukar didekati,
the furthest from help,
mereka yang jauh dari bantuan,
the most excluded,
mereka yang paling terpinggir.
is why we stay to the end,
Kami setia hingga ke akhir
and we never give up.
dan tidak pernah berputus asa.